So, hi guys, I'm Sweta. I'm working as a senior software engineer at Rippling in the mobile platform team. Today, I'll be giving a talk on getting started with React Native. In this talk, we'll be covering what is React Native, why do we need to use React Native, what are its prerequisites, we'll be creating our first React Native application, points to take care of while development, and some takeaways. So, to begin with, I'm sure almost every one of you might have heard of this term React Native. But what exactly is React Native? So, React Native, also known as RN, is a popular JavaScript based mobile app framework that allows you to build natively rendered mobile apps for iOS and Android. It is based on React, which is the Facebook's JavaScript library for building user interfaces, but instead of targeting the browser, it targets the mobile platforms. In other words, developers can now write mobile applications that look and truly feel native, all from the comfort of a JavaScript library that we already know and love. Plus, because most of the code you write can be shared between platforms, React Native makes it super easy to simultaneously develop for both Android and iOS. When React Native was first launched, developers used React Native to build only the mobile applications. But with the time, now it can be used to build Windows applications or TV applications as well. The first way JavaScript developers tried to build mobile applications was by wrapping the native application in a sandbox browser called a web view using tools like Apache, Cordova, Adobe PhoneGap with the philosophy of write once, run anywhere. This worked, but it can be really hard to make a website feel like a true native experience. Here comes the React Native. It takes a slight different approach. It feels just like React DOM for the web, but instead of using HTML and the DOM as the building blocks for the UI, it uses the native components that you would find on iOS and Android with the philosophy of learn once and write anywhere. It actually lets you create truly native applications for iOS and Android and doesn't compromise the user experience. It provides a core set of platform agnostic native components like view, text, and image that map directly to the platform's native UI building blocks. React primitives render to the native platform UI, meaning your app uses the same native platform APIs just like the other applications do. So, taking the example of Vue, in Android and iOS development, a view is the basic building block of a UI. A small rectangular element, although a very powerful element on the screen, which can be used to display text, images, or respond to even the user input. Even the smallest visual elements of an app, like a line of text or a button, are kind of views. Amazing, no? Some kind of views can contain other views. It's views all the way down. So, for an example, here in the image, we have on the left side the Android device and on the right side the iOS device, where the core components of the React Native are mapped to the native components of the native, which is the view, which being the core component of the React Native, is mapped to the view group of Android and the UI view of iOS. Similar to the React for the web, the React Native applications are written using a mixture of JavaScript and XML markup known as JSX. Then, under the hood, the React Native bridge invokes the native rendering APIs in Objective C or Swift for iOS or Java Kotlin for Android. Thus, your application will render using real mobile UI components, not the web components, not the web views, and will look and feel just like any other mobile application. And all of this is achieved by the mapping of the core components with the native components. Now, what are the components? So, components are nothing but the independent and the reusable bit of codes. They serve the same purpose as the JavaScript functions, but they work in isolation, and here in this case, they return the JSX. So, when I talked about Vue, the views are the core components which are ready to use components available for React Native, such as text, images, scroll view, button, the most essential components. It has many more other core components for everything from controls to activity indicators to switch to radio. You can all find them in the API section. Then we have the native components. Here, the view group and the UI view were the native components. This UI image view is also a native component, and this UI text view too. So these are the platform backed components, which are explicitly written in the native language to be used in React Native. In Android development, you write views in Kotlin or Java. In iOS development, you use Swift or Objective C. But with React Native, you can invoke these views with JavaScript using the React components. At runtime, the React Native creates the corresponding Android and iOS views for those components. Just as you can see, the view was mapped into the view group, the image was wrapped into this image view, and the text was wrapped into the text view. Because the React Native components are backed by the same views as Android and iOS, the React Native apps look, feel, and perform just like the any other applications. So, if you are a web developer who knows JavaScript, or really if you're someone trying to learn how to code for the first time, then React Native is definitely a great way to get involved in mobile application development because you can take very few building blocks that are readily available from the React Native library, put them together, and create an app really quickly. And from there, you can use your knowledge of mobile development paradigms and processes to create native apps in other languages. Now, coming, why do we need React Native? So, first is it's tried, tested, and trusted. Facebook built the React Native first and foremost to create a fantastic mobile app of their own social media portal. More likely than not, you have used it on your phone by way of Facebook or the Instagram mobile application. Doesn't it feel like a native app? Surely it does. But since React Native has gone open source, more and more companies have decided to bet on it and create their mobile apps this way, like Facebook, Instagram, Skype, Walmart, Discord, Bloomberg, and many more. Here you can see the examples of the famous mobile applications built with purely React Native. To name a few, Skype, Bloomberg, Wix, Facebook, Instagram, and many more. The next good point, the advantage of using React Native is it allows us to have one ecosystem. An all-round prepared JavaScript engineer can develop a versatile application utilizing this framework without diving into the ecosystem and language specifics of each OS. You don't need to be pro in Swift. You don't need to be pro in Kotlin or Java. With React Native, you create one code base that works on both Android and iOS. And it doesn't just work, it compiles to native Java and Swift code. Specifically, React Native creates a bridge between the web UI components and the native counterparts, where the views render on both the platforms, respecting platform environments look and feel. Then we have this fast refresh. The primary advantage of using React Native is that it is truly time saving. Initially, it spares the developers from recompiling with each change, since the application reloads right away amid the improvement stage. See your changes as soon as you save. Isn't it amazing? With the power of JavaScript, React Native lets you iterate at lightning speed. No more waiting for the native builds to finish. Save, see, and repeat. Next, we have use the language which you already know. I'm sure JavaScript is a language which we almost everyone have been taught in our schools. You need less specialized knowledge to create React Native apps. Chances are you already have someone on your team that can program in JavaScript, possibly even in React.js specifically. Code reuse and knowledge sharing. Working with React Native can dramatically shrink the resources required to build a mobile application. Any developer who knows how to write React code can now target the web, iOS, and Android all with the same skill set. That is, if I can write in React Native, then I can easily move to write the React.js code and build the web application, and vice versa. It lets the team to iterate more quickly and share knowledge and resources more effectively. Besides shared knowledge, much of your code can be shared too. Not all the code you'll be writing will be cross platform, and depending on what functionality you'll need on a specific platform, you may occasionally need to deep dive into the native language. But reusing code across platform is surprisingly easy with this React Native. The good point again is growing all the time. React Native is under active development. Both Facebook and the massive community around React Native are constantly working on improvements for the framework. If you can't solve a problem right now because React Native doesn't have the solution, I bet in the few months the situation might be different. It is supported by Facebook and it is community driven. It is supported by the contributions from individuals and companies all around the world. The community is so vast and is always shipping exciting new projects and exploring platforms beyond Android and iOS, such as with repos like the React Native Windows, the React Native Mac OS, and the React Native Web. So, in order to start with the React Native, there are some things which you need to have, and it's very good if you have them. An understanding of JavaScript fundamentals. If you're new to JavaScript or need a refresher, you can dive in and brush up your skills at Mozilla Developer Network. They have a very good documentation for that. Next, you should be familiar with some of the programming concepts like functions, objects, arrays, and to a lesser extent, classes. You should have some familiarity with HTML, CSS too. So, let's begin and try to create our first React Native application. So, when you decide to create a React Native application, it gives you two things. It gives you two ways by which you can create a React Native application. First is Expo Go, and the other one is React Native CLI. We'll go into them in short to know what exactly do they offer us. Expo Go. So if you're new to mobile development, the easiest way to get started is with this Expo CLI. Expo is a set of tools built around React Native, and while it has many features, the most relevant feature for us right now is that it can get you writing a React Native app within minutes. And it's true. I'll be showing you the demo. You can actually get started with the Expo Go within minutes. You'll only need a recent version of Node.js and the phone or the emulator. Now the React Native CLI. If you are somewhat familiar with the mobile development, maybe it Android or iOS, you may want to use the React Native CLI. It requires the native tools like Xcode or Android Studio to get started. If you already have one of these tools installed, you should be able to get up and running within a few minutes. If they're not installed, then you should be prepared to expect to spend about an hour installing and configuring them. So, before you start, the real question is which one to pick, the plain React Native or the Expo. There's really no right or wrong answer to that. It all depends on the context and what your needs are. But if you want to quickly get started with React Native, so I'll go ahead and recommend that you start out with Expo. It's fast, simple, and easy to set up. You can dive right into tinkering with React Native code and get a feel of what it has to offer in just a couple of hours. But as you begin to grasp the different concepts and as the need for the different native features arises, you might find that Expo is kind of limiting. Yes, it has a lot of amazing features available, but not all the native modules that are available to the standard React Native projects are supported. So we'll be starting with the Expo Go. The first requirement is you should have the node installed in your system. Now, the first step is you have to run the following command in order to create a new React Native project. So in the screenshot, in the image attached, I have this Expo demo one, which I created. Now, we'll be creating, once again, the application, and I'll be naming it, again, the Expo demo. So it's like the Yarn Create Expo app, and then we'll be running this Expo demo. So now, while it set up your project, let's further move to the next steps, which will be coming. Yes, that's all the step you need to make your project setup with the Expo Go. So simple, isn't it? Just run this command, your whole project will get set up within a few minutes, not a minute, I'll say. Within less than a minute, your project will get set up. So while it is getting set up, so once the project gets set up, all we need to do is we need to navigate to the directory of the project we just created and then just start the server. Because ultimately, you need to start the server in order to make your changes reflect in your device and with a code base which will be created. So either you can run the yarn start command or you can directly run the platform on which you directly want to run the application into, like running yarn iOS, yarn web, or yarn Android. Anything by which you can run your project. So see, it's done. Your project setup is done. So now the next step which was we need to get into the directory which we just created of the project. So I'll be doing cd expo demo. And now I am ready. All I need to do is I'll be running yarn iOS. And with this command, my iOS application will set up and you'll be able to see the changes over here. Great, isn't it? That's what we are going to do. So see, here it is. We have this iPhone running with the Expo doing its changes. So let's wait for the application to refresh. It's bundling the JavaScript bundle. It's 96%. And voila, we have our application ready with the Expo app, with the Expo Go. So this is what the app.js of ours will look like. Just the plain JSX with a default function, and here the text which is coming. This is already in the setup which Expo created for us. This is all in the boilerplate. You don't have to do anything. It comes by default with that particular command which we ran. So as you can see, it's here, open up app.js to start working on your app. And here it is the same. If you want to use this particular application on your devices, all you need to do is install the Expo Go application on your devices and connect to the same wireless network as your computer is on. So on Android, you can use the Expo application app to scan the QR code from your terminal. So as you can see, this is my QR code from the terminal. We need to scan this and your device will be ready with this particular code. Same on the iOS, you can do the same. You just need to scan the QR code and your application will be there. So this is how it's going to look in your different devices. The left side is the Android emulator, which I ran into, and this right side is the iOS. So all you need to do is open your app.js and do some changes, do some tweaking, do some modifications, and see your code right within your eyes. Next, we'll see using the React Native CLI. So using this React Native CLI requires us to do some of the configurations to set up a development environment. So for that, if you're actually creating a new application or integrating React Native into an existing application, or if you eject it from the Expo, which by the way, you can do that, you'll need to do the respective platform specific handling to set up the environment. We'll go through these in the further steps. And for the demo purpose, we'll be using the development OS as the Mac OS. So the first step is similar to the same. We need to install the Node 14 or whichever is newer. Then we need to install the Node and the Watchman. So the recommended way to do it on the Mac system is using the brew. Then we have to do the respective configurations for the Android and iOS. For Android, you need to download the JDK. You need to install Android Studio, Android SDK, then configure the Android SDK root environment variable. For iOS, you need to do Xcode and its command line tools, Cocoa Pods. Once you're done with that, all you need to do is run this command, npx react native init, and the name of your project. Similarly, the way which we did for the Expo. Once we're done with it, it will give you a boilerplate, which will look like this. Your app.js, which is the basic entry point of your application. It's going to look like this with the sections. And here is the screenshot of the main application, the main screen, which is going to come when we run the application using React Native CLI. Just the way we did for the Expo, we ran the yarn iOS. We can do it over here as well. In Expo, we used Yarn, but here we are using NPX. You can use Yarn as well. All you need to do is run this command. First, you need to start the server. Then you need to run the command React Native run iOS or React Native run Android. And accordingly, your application will get built and it will look like this. Open the app.js, do some tweaking, do the changes, save it, and see your changes instantly. So, congratulations, you have successfully run and modified your first React Native application. If you're curious to learn more about React Native, I'll actually suggest you to go through the documentations of React Native. They're actually very, very good. And especially setting up for the environment or anything, they're actually amazing. You need to go through them. So, what should you watch out for when using the React Native? So now you have set up the React Native. There are some things which you should follow or take care of when building it. React Native is not 100% native. Despite what Facebook might try to tell you, React Native apps are not equivalent to true native applications written entirely Swift Objective C or Java Kotlin. Let's take the native Gmail as an example. The Gmail app includes a worker that checks your inbox. Your Gmail account is synced with the whole mobile system, not just the application. Gmail also knows that whether if you are on mobile data or Wi-Fi, it should sync less often. With React Native, you're not integrated such closely with the system, at least not out of the box. Your account will be stored in the application, not the system. It's also harder to take into account Wi-Fi versus mobile data, although it is achievable, but it's kind of quite harder. For some application, this will not be a problem. For others, it might be game changing. But you can make it as native as you need. When you choose to use React Native, you don't have to use it exclusively just the JavaScript. You can still use React for most of the app and native for the crucial pieces that need to integrate 100% with a native system. Just like the example we took for the Gmail, we are still, if you're not able to do it or achieve it with the React part, we can do it natively and with the help of the bridge, call that component or trigger that component or add a listener to it in order to get the changes or get the response. Some of you guys may argue that React Native saying it's still not the same as a true native app. My counter argument will be simple. It doesn't have to be same. With a little additional work, you can make it as native as you need by adding some Java or Swift code for specific cases and features. It's such flexible. But badly written JavaScript or heavy calculations could hurt your performance. Using JavaScript in itself is a solution that has its drawback. For example, if the JavaScript code in your React Native app is poorly written, you will feel the difference more strongly than if your app was a pure native one. Although there might be also the bad, poor code quality, but if you compare both of them, then your React Native app will actually feel far worse than the native counterpart. However, this is a slight drawback that you won't feel if you have skilled React Native developer on your side. As Tim Mensch described the trade-off very well in one of his four answers, badly written JavaScript is slightly more likely to be slow than badly written native code. So, if your developers are borderline, then you might be slightly better off spending nearly twice as much to develop two native apps. He preferred to hire strong developers though. So JavaScript may also slow down performance if your app is very, very calculation heavy. This is not a very common case for most mobile apps, but still a scenario you should consider. So coming to the last part, takeaways. So what should you know about React Native? Here are the key takeaways for our talk, from our talk. If you're using the Facebook or Airbnb mobile app, you're actually using React Native without even knowing it. React Native apps are easy to write, saving time for developers and cutting costs for project managers. They lower your development and maintenance cost because you don't have to deal with two separate code bases for iOS and Android. Since React Native is just a wrapper for native components, there's nothing stopping you from adding native Swift or Java code where you need it. At the end of the day, you're still coding in JavaScript. There's no need to learn Swift Java or to add developers with such skills to your roster. It is growing such fast with no signs of stopping. So, If you are a JavaScript developer who wants high flexibility and the ability to build mobile apps with a powerful JavaScript interface, React Native is your best choice. It's best for anyone who wants to have full control of their applications and understand the intricacies of the code's inner workings without heavy abstractions. Since React Native is open source, anyone, including you guys, can contribute to the code base. And as a contributor, you're essentially writing code that powers all these applications. If any of that speaks to you, check out the Facebook's React Native website. They have a bunch of documentation, blogs, tutorials, and a Twitter page as well. And they also have a Stack Overflow tag and a whole bunch of ways to get in touch with the community. With this, here are some references, the useful references which might come in handy for you guys: the React Native Dev, the React Native Dev Help, Getting Started, the JavaScript MDN website. So that was all. Thank you so much for your attention.